Coming off relegation last year from Division 1, the Stallions were confident going into the season, and a strong group of returners, plus a good core of rookies, made it look like these expectations were highly possible. As the Stallions went into their first game of the season, expectations were high and they were wanting the win. After a quick MMU touchdown, the Stallions started to try and get up the field, but first there was a pass interference and then many flags on multiple plays resulting in a punt. After they got the ball back, Boston started to show why he would be good all year, and as the ball was intercepted by Goggles, Ryan would try to increase his tackle count by any way possible, going for his own teammates. After the break, Joey would get a touchdown followed by another interception by Goggles, however MMU would once again score. Just before the 2-minute warning, Zach would show off the same skills he uses in LRV, going through several people, and then just after getting a touchdown for himself. However, the 2 points and onside kick would end up being no good, meaning the Stallions would open the season with a loss. After the first week of fixtures, despite a Staffordshire loss, they were sat in 5th place by virtue of having a -1 points difference. Weirdly, at this stage, the top 3 positions were all occupied by arguably 3 of the worst teams in the division. Following the Week 1 loss, the Stallions looked to bounce back against a much weaker Huddersfield side. The Stallions' defence came out all guns blazing, forcing a Hawks fumble on their own 6-yard line. However, the Stallions themselves couldn't punch it in and ended up stalling on the 3-yard line. However, after the turnover on downs, the Hawks fumbled again on the 8-yard line, with a Stallions touchdown to Boston Ben and a 2 points to Joey afterwards. Immediately after the kickoff, the Stallions got the ball back on downs before a Blosh touchdown turned around for Aaron's first 2 points on the season. A Staff's defensive fumble recovery by Chris helped lead for a 33-yard throw from Zach to Joey, lining Zach up for a touchdown run on himself. A Hawks fumble recovered by Kier was then quickly turned around as the Hawks recovered a fumble of their own going into half-time. After the Hawks marched down the field, they were stopped 3 times on the 1-yard line, denying them from getting a score. A fumble recovery by Ryan helped Staffs get the ball back before a final touchdown on the game by Kier helped the Stallions get the 36-0 win going into full-time. Once the second week of fixtures was over, the table looked like this, with the Stallions sat in 3rd position after starting to find their form. After their first big win and shutout of the season, Staffs were hungry for another, and with the next game against rivals Kiel, the appetite couldn't be bigger. Following the kick-off, an early interception by Ant helped the Stallions get on offense, where they marched down and Joey got a touchdown before the following PAT was converted, allowing Stu to get his first point for the Stallions. After they returned the kick, Kiel started to march down the field with their QB scrambling before a huge tackle by Ant. After failing to reach the end zone, Kiel decided to go for a field goal before falling short and being returned a few yards by Goggles. Staffs then marched down the field themselves, with Nathaniel running in a touchdown, however this PAT was no good. After several big stops by the Staffs defence, the ball was turned over, before an interception by Kiel was then stopped by Boston Ben. Despite being 13-0 up at the break, the Stallions coaches wanted more, and the players duly delivered, with Ryan Mills getting a touchdown early on in the second half. However, there was another missed kick. At this point, Kiel was starting to lose their heads a bit, including a personal foul on our QB for an automatic first down. This helped lead to Joey getting a touchdown with another missed kick. A fumble recovery by Kiel provided the visitors with some hope, but an interception by Goggles soon put that out. A touchdown by Staffs for Nathaniel, and no point after, and another touchdown for David with 2 points from Aaron, soon led for the full-time score of 40-0. With the third fixture over and the Stallions sitting comfortably in second, the division was starting to look a bit like a 2-horse race, although MMU would have the advantage after the Week 1 win. Coming out of the Christmas break, the Stallions were keen to shake off the rust, and thankfully the scheduling had allowed for an easier matchup against a weaker Chester side, as injuries had forced many rotations within the squad, including Zach not starting at QB. From the kick-off, defence were firing, with Chris getting the first hard tackle in. Straight after, rookie Desi would recover a fumble to get in for his first touchdown, while Stu decided that he was going to play the crossbar challenge. Big Ben would get his first involvement, swatting the ball out the air as the QB threw it over the line. and then a drop ball by Chester would result in Big Ben picking it up and the Stallions' offense getting out onto the field. A couple of good first downs for Kier and Joey would unfortunately result in nothing. Another fumble by Chester would give Kyle the chance to recover it. Get in, big lad. Kier would then go on one of his first down runs, followed unfortunately by a Chester interception, but a saving tackle from Zach would stop it. After this, Chester couldn't convert, so the Stallions' offense would take to the field. Despite getting a few flags on their drives, a touchdown from Joey would be followed up by 2 points for Kier, meaning the Stallions were leading into half-time. After the half, there would be a penalty on Chester, despite the Stallions' failed attempt at a fake punt, with a flag being called for rather obvious reasons. Then a touchdown from Blosh would set Zach off on a 2-point run, eventually given due to unnecessary roughness. Once Chester got the ball back, Chris and Big Ben would prove their worth once again, smashing the running back behind his own line. Then Big Ben would follow this up with a safety for his first score on the game. Gaz would prove he has still got it with a big hit on the next Chester push. A touchdown from Kier and PAT from Stu would put the Stallions further ahead before a big interception by Ant would give the team momentum to push on and get another 2 touchdowns before full time. The first of which was to Kier before Big Ben put his athletic prowess on display, bursting through the line to rip the ball before spinning his way into the end zone. With the final score of Stallions 44, Chester 0. During a Week 4 surprise loss for MMU against DMU, the division title would be hard fought for until the end between those two sides, despite Staffordshire being arguably the best team in the division. Going into the next game, the Stallions were on a hot scoring streak, being 126 points without answer. However, Lincoln started the game quick as the Stallions were caught napping, letting them get a quick touchdown. However, the Stallions themselves were quick to bounce back, and Kier would start with a good run before being tackled in the strangest way. George would get his first touchdown of the year, and Stu would convert to put the Stallions 1 point in the lead. However, after Lincoln couldn't duplicate their first drive, the Stallions would get the ball back and make 30 yards on the first play, with Kier then running down the field once more. After 3 more attempts and 3 flags, Kier would finally get a touchdown and the PAT to follow. Instantly after this, Luke got an impressive interception that he maybe should have scored on. While George would get his dancing shoes on, Kier would follow in and get another touchdown with a quick PAT to follow. George once again showed why he was in the team before the whistle would be blown for half-time. Coming out of the break, a first down for the Stallions would end up being intercepted by Lincoln. However, a blocked punt by Chris, which was recovered to Luke, to Chris's dismay, would result in his first defensive touchdown. A quick interception by Kier would then set up a run for himself on the next play before the Stallions would stumble to get further up the field. A fumble by Lincoln will be recovered by Chris before Sim would get his running shoes on before fumbling it himself. Luckily, this one was recovered by the Stallions as well. Bloss showed George that he's not the only one who could dance, taking the Stallions up to the 1-yard line. Cue Chris's big moment. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Chris has finally scored from the 1-yard line, even if he did have a bit of help this time. Final score, Stallions 33, Lincoln 6. The stakes were high coming into the next game. If DMU won, they would win the division. If we won, MMU would win the division. Either way, the Stallions were out of it, but they were assured playoffs. But one route would be easier than the other. The game started with a couple of good plays from Kier and Joey, setting their usual good tone. Shortly after, Kier got the first score with the PAT missing. After the kickoff, there were multiple hits and punts from both teams before Kier showed his old lineman strength. Once a lineman, always a lineman, eh? Coming out of the half, the score would even up thanks to a DMU touchdown. Meanwhile, quietly, a person called Sam Nash would make a couple of very good and important catches to help put Boston and Joey into good positions for a touchdown. DMU would fail a field goal, and Kier would hit hard to let them know he was still in the game. However, this led to a touchdown for them, levelling the score once again, with Kier trying to hurdle his way to the end zone. At full time, the score was deadlocked and the teams would go into overtime, with DMU eventually winning it in their second attempt. After a 10-year barren spell, the Stallions were finally back in the playoffs, and they kicked it off with a 7-hour journey up to Edinburgh, which, I'll have you know, is in a separate country. The Stallions would start the game with a tackle on the running back behind the line of scrimmage, setting the tone for a tough game for both offences early. Shortly after, Ben Hocking would manage to strip the ball and run a good half of the pitch before his old age finally caught up to him. It was back and forth from each team, with there being a lot of punting and interceptions, but just before the halftime, George would once again get his dancing shoes back on and use his flag skills down the sideline. Coming out of the half-time, Joey would show his commitment to the team, making a diving catch, before George decided to have a little dance once again, meaning that Joey could get into the end zone, with Stu converting the PAT. Edinburgh couldn't convert on their opportunities, meaning George kept his shoes on, for now, before an easy, shall we say, interception for Kier. A fumble by Edinburgh was the first of many turnovers by both sides, but with an interception by Ant setting the tone for the fourth quarter. With Blosh finally making a catch on the day, and Joey getting another touchdown on the year. Edinburgh would fight back to get a touchdown in the waning seconds of the game without some stopping from Zach at safety, before the onside kick was caught by Joey and the game would be over, leaving the Stallions with a huge win and a place in the next round. Going into the semi-final, the Stallions had been drawn against the number 1 seeded team, Leeds Griffins. However, they knew that they were only a win away from a historic final. The game started harshly with an interception for Leeds, followed by a touchdown. However, things looked up when their captain was ejected for a personal foul and targeting, and then the head coach removed from the game for abusing the refs on their decision. As the refs managed to settle the Leeds sideline, Zach set off on a nice little run, setting up Joey for a touchdown with a successful kick by Stu. Leeds looked to make sure their ejections weren't in vain as they returned the following kick for over 50 yards, allowing for an easy touchdown on the ensuing drive. After a season of struggles, Simeon showed flashes of the player he could become, going on a super run. With Nathaniel back from injury, he showed he hadn't lost his touch. Desi and Chris worked together to force a fumble that Leeds recovered for a loss of yards going into half-time. As the second half got underway, Leeds quickly fumbled, providing the Stallions with a spark of encouragement. Sadly, this couldn't be turned into points as the Stallions missed a field goal. Big Ben and Luke would take down the Leeds running back in the backfield before a fumble recovery by Kier. Another failed three-point attempt gave the ball back to Leeds, whose 2 successive touchdowns dampened a brave Stallions side, before Simeon brought back hope on another big run. After a big stop by Ant helped force a change of possession, Super Sim had yet another huge play. Zach ran in his final league touchdown for the Stallions before a 5th Griffins touchdown was the final nail in the coffin for the Stallions' playoff dreams. Griffins 35, Stallions 13. After a fairly successful year, the Stallions were looking forward to giving Kiel another dicking. The game started well, with Ant once again bringing his A game against the Crusaders with a huge interception to start us off. As per, Joey gave his all and started his second final game with a good catch before following up with a touchdown. And a textbook PAT from Stu. The defence quickly swallowed up Kiel's next drive as Kyle ripped the ball from the running back before panicking as he's never held a ball before, and instead of running in for a touchdown, just sat down. What a twat. Kier made use of the good field position, however, getting another early touchdown for the Stallions. Kyle put in a shift to stop the Kiel offence from gaining yards, and Ant got another interception with a 40-yard return tacked on. Before Nathaniel picked up from where he left off. After some good plays by Desi and Donovan, a sack by Chris helped lead to another interception. Zach showed off his legs once again with another good run for a first down before the whistle went for half-time. Coming out of the break, Joey put his body on the line, making a huge block for Kier as he broke a couple of tackles. After a change of possession, the defence makes a couple huge tackles to help return the ball to the Stallions. Joey made another good catch before Sim burst through the line, and the tackler for a nice 10-yard run before Zach completes the first down. Zach once again shows why he'll be missed so much next year after running in for another touchdown. A huge tackle for Big Ben in the backfield wasn't enough to stop Kiel from getting points on the board. Then a typical Zach throw and a beautiful run after the catch by Kier took the Stallions down to the red zone before, for some fucking reason, Zach threw a touchdown to Sam bloody Nash of all people. A Donovan interception and a questionable Kiel safety helped wind down the game with a late ejection on Kiel, resulting in a 25-9 win.